Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being patient. We were working through a little bit of a technical delay on our end, so we appreciate your patience while we work that out. I want to welcome you to today's town hall, supporting youth mental health and the transition back to the classroom. My name is Angela Brand, and I'm with NAMI California. We are really excited to partner with the folks at California Department of Education for this town hall. We're welcoming Monica Napocino to talk to you a little bit about some of the strategies for supporting youth as they transition back into the classroom. We'll also be hearing from Sophia, who leads our youth programming efforts here at NAMI California, all with the hopes that we can give you some really helpful tools as we support students, as we look at, for some, what's now their third year of school with some kind of COVID type restriction in place. The last year and a half has been really difficult for folks for so many reasons. And we know that the long-term, mental health impacts, the economic impacts, just the, physical and emotional toll that it's taken on folks. It's been a really rough time for folks. And as we think about young people and what it's been like for them to be disconnected from school and their peers and teachers, and that support structure that's so important for kids, the topic of supporting our students is really important right now, as it is always. But we hope that the material presented to you today will help you as you help those young people in your life. Before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping things to review. We are recording today's event. The recording of this town hall, as well as the materials that we'll share with you, will all be provided at the close of this event. If you registered, the email address that you used to register is the one that we'll use to send that information to you. If you have any questions, we invite you to use the chat box ongoing throughout the presentation, or at the end when we have Q&A. We'll use that chat box to pull your questions for our presenters. We do have everyone in listen-only mode. That just sort of helps with background noise and distractions. So again, if you have anything that you want to, ask for clarification, et cetera, please go ahead and use that chat box. We will be using a polling feature called Mentimeter. I guess we can get to the next slide. I can talk about Mentimeter in a second. So before we get started, we do like to make sure that, as we're all here, that we're creating a safe and inclusive space for our presenters, our panelists, our participants, our staff, all of those that are joining today. And so we ask in this space that you be curious, open, and respectful, that you take this information and be willing to learn from one another, share the space, speak from your own experiences, accept and be sensitive to diversity, that you acknowledge that learning leaves, but the names stay. In this space, we take care of ourselves. If there's ever any point in our presentations or panels where you feel the need to step away and take care of yourself, if you're activated by a certain topic or something that comes up, please know that you have, all the space to care for yourself, to move through that. So in this, we ask that you reserve the right to change your mind. Often we talk about topics and we have guests that present information that can help folks better understand our systems, how to care for one another, how to care for themselves. And in that, there might be opportunities to learn more about, what we do and how we do it. So reserve the right to change your mind and keep an open mind for that. Let's go to the next slide. So we do have some polling questions for you all today. We use a tool called Mentimeter. For those of you that have joined us through the duration of our town hall series, you know that this is an anonymous polling service. All you have to do is either on your smartphone, or you can open a new tab in your browser, go to menti.com. That's www.menti.com. Thank you to Ragini for dropping that in the chat box. It'll prompt you to use the code to participate, and that code is 51320509. We'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well. That'll pop up an option for you to follow along in the polls that we use today. Again, it's anonymous. You don't have to use your name or anything. If you'd like, if it's easier, you can also put your responses into the chat box if you're more comfortable. And again, there's the instructions there, menti.com, enter the code, and you'll be set up to go. So the first question we have for everyone today is just to kind of get a sense of who's joining us and where you're from. So if you could let us know what county you're joining us from. So we've got some responses popping up in the chat box. We've got Riverside, YOLO, Kern County, San Mateo, LA. Oh, we have a nice spread across the state. We like to see that. Oh, Pop agrees. Stanislaus, King, Sacramento. Thank you all for taking that moment to share. We've got a few more. Wait just a sec. All right, we'll go to the next one. Then we just ask that you identify your role. So how do you sort of identify whether you're a family member, parent, caregiver, a peer consumer, a student, if you're one of our NAMI affiliates. Great. Thank you all. It's nice to see we have a pretty good array of folks joining from all the different populations. That's exciting. We've got some NCHS advisors. Welcome. All right. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I think it's just the intro slide. Yep. All right. So I just wanted to welcome Monica Napocino. She's with us today from the Department of Education. Monica has been doing this work for a long time as a longtime partner of NAMI California. We're really, really excited to welcome her into this space to share with you the things that we can do to support students as they're transitioning back into the classroom. I know that Monica has a lot of really great information for you all, so I don't want to take up too much time on the housekeeping end. I'd like to just go ahead and turn it over to you, Monica, to get started for today.
Thank you, Angela, and just wanted to thank the wonderful NAMI team for inviting me to share data and insights and resources, all in the name of supporting our students, their mental health, and their return to school. And I also really want to thank everybody who's here, right? The parents of families, the caregivers, the affiliates, if we have any young people on there, for just taking the time out today to learn how to best support your children, loved ones who are preparing to either start or have just started school. I myself am a parent of two girls, one who recently graduated from high school and one who's a junior who just started school yesterday. So I'm sharing some of the same concerns and worries that others have during these very unusual and ever-changing times, right? With so many things happening, not only with a pandemic, but socially, politically, around the world, environmentally. There's a lot that's being thrown out there, right? So we constantly have to remind ourselves that, and others, right, that it's okay to have all the emotions and the feelings that we're experiencing, because these times are very difficult for everyone. And in so many different ways, right? Financially, emotionally, facing losses, and just a myriad of situations. And yet we're expected to function at the same level that we were doing, before the pandemic. And some of us are even being asked to do more with the worry and the uncertainty looming over us. So I'm just a reminder as we're getting started to be gentle on yourself and your loved ones, and even those ones that you may not really like that much, right? It's okay to take breaks, and it's actually really healthy to do so. You don't have to push through everything. We really need to focus on, putting our egos to the side for a minute and focus on what really matters, because life throws all kinds of curveballs. My electricity just went out and we are having to deal with that. So we have to pivot, right? I want to be able to follow through, but there was a little bit of anxiety. So I'm going to take a second and I'll invite you just to take a deep breath, in through your nose, like if you were smelling a good pot roast or your favorite tacos, and Keep it in there for 2, 3, 4 seconds and let it out like you were blowing out a candle. I'm going to invite you to do that one more time. In, smell some roses, some flowers. Hopefully you're not allergic. Take it in. 2, 3, 4, and blow. If you do this a couple of times, you'll start to feel a little lightheaded, but the other impact that it has is that it really just relaxes your shoulders, your body. And there are some people I know that don't really like this kind of exercise, but it does calm you, and it's good practice. You probably don't want to do that with somebody who's in crisis because they're not going to respond well, but let's just do this right now as we center and ground ourselves for the information that I'll be sharing today. As we're going through this, I want to just remind you, and this may sound a little cliche, but I want you to remember that you are not alone. Even though there may be times that you feel like it, you're never really alone. There are so many people out there and so many different support systems, caring people who can help in those heavy times, right? And so with that, can you please move to the next slide? We're going to kick it off. Looking at why it's important for us to focus on mental health, and not only at home, but also in school, as well as in our communities. Okay, next slide. And I'm going to be presenting information that was gleaned before the pandemic, right? We knew before the pandemic that our children and our youth were in dire need of mental health services and supports. And if we look at the tables and compare the 2017 to the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is actually administered to 9th through 12th grade students in traditional public high schools. And this is California statistics. So in 2017, 32.1% of 9th through 12th graders felt sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 or more consecutive weeks. In that same category in 2019, that number grew to 45.3%, which is a marked 13.2% increase. And then the number of 9th through 12th graders that seriously considered attempting suicide during the 12 months before the survey grew from 17% in 2017 to 26.6% in 2019. And that's a significant increase of 9.6%. Also, in 2019, 23.7% of 9th through 12th graders planned how they would attempt suicide. They actually had a plan during the 12 months prior to the survey. And this is compared to 14.1% in 2017. So that is a significant increase. Next slide. So the percentage of 9th through 12th graders in 2019 who actually attempted suicide during the 12 months prior to the survey decreased slightly from 9.4% in 2017 to 9.2% in 2019. And then the percentage of suicide attempts that resulted in treatment by a doctor or nurse during the 12 months before the survey actually increased slightly from 3.1% in 2017 to 3.7% in 2019. And this is all, again, pre-pandemic, so we don't have figures necessarily for 2020 or even 2021. What we do know is that the hospital rates have increased significantly, especially for young girls between the ages of 13 to 17. So we need to focus on this. It's a dire situation. Next slide. This is just a graphic where it puts everything into perspective, right? Approximately 2 to 3% of students make a serious suicide attempt annually, and this is nationwide. This is the latest research from the Centers for Disease Control in 2017. And when you look at it in a school of 2,000, right? When you look at just the mere number of 2 to 3%, it seems quite low, right? But if you're looking at a school with a population of 2,000, this means between 40 and 60 students. That's significant. Those are significant numbers. So this is why we need to really focus and be vigilant on our children's behavior, on those children and youth around us, even if they're not our kids, if they're, neighbors, nieces, etc. Next slide. Now we're going to cover a little bit because of previous data that I shared, again, was before the pandemic, and looking at data during the pandemic, which was actually provided by the Youth Liberty Squad. And the Youth Liberty Squad is actually a group of high school students that's supported by the ACLU Southern California region. And they surveyed high school students 3 times during the 2021 school year. And these are the results of the survey, right? We had over 500 students that participated in the survey. This was a little bit lower than expected, but I think it's because by that time people were really surveyed and zoomed out, as we're still finding out, right? But this survey of California students revealed that over 40% of students were reporting that no one had personally asked them about their mental wellness over the past 3 months. And we're talking, this happened in May and June. So all this time, nobody had asked them about their mental wellness. That's almost half of our student population. And the 4 most common people to check in on students' mental health were their friends, their family, teachers, and counselors. Counselors, 11%, their friends were 35%. So that's who they're looking to. Their students and young people are looking to each other for help and support. Only 12% of students actually reported receiving mental health support from school, or another 15% reported receiving support from community or out of school. And then roughly 9% of students reported receiving counseling or therapy for the first time during the pandemic. So they weren't necessarily getting services before. And another 17% said that they received services before the pandemic, while 18% said they didn't receive any services, even though they felt they needed them. Lots of students are saying that they're reporting, feeling tired, overwhelmed, and stressed. And students are, really worried about the health and the well-being of their families, their friends, financial, job losses, academics, you name it. There's a worry attached to it. Next slide. Okay, so when we look at, let's see if we can pause it for just a second. Okay. When we look at mental health and how students or really anyone communicates their needs, it never really looks like what we want it, right? Ideally, many times children and youth really don't know what they're feeling or why they're feeling it. So it's up to us, really, the adults in their lives, the parents, the caregivers, families, teachers, and other staff. I mean, I'm talking even bus drivers and school secretaries, janitors even, to help them unpack their feelings and to help them process as well as learn healthy coping skills. Because, we have to be honest and real that we're going to encounter more difficult times during our lives. And so it's important for these young people to learn healthy ways of learning how to face these uncomfortable feelings and to also have healthy outlets. So I just wanted to show this video because it really depicts, what students say or what students don't say. So if we can play that, that'd be great. It's just really quick.
Thanks for helping me when I was really out of breath during drills yesterday. You suggested it might be asthma. It's actually an anxiety disorder. My anterior cingulate cortex has a population of overactive neurons that produce extreme fear of uncertainty. This manifests itself into what is informally called panic attacks. I'd love to chat with you about ideas on how to help manage this so I can be a better player and have a better life.
There are a couple of other videos. These are from the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, and they do such a great job in depicting what no teen is ever going to say and how their behavior is going to manifest itself in different ways. Their needs are going to manifest into behaviors that sometimes is acting out. So it's important for us to make sure that we are being vigilant, that we are actually trying to see what they're trying to tell us, right? And try to decipher, is this typical adolescent and child development, or is it something more? We don't ever want to exaggerate, and we don't want to jump to, if we see our young one suffering or experiencing some kind of emotional distress, and immediately go, towards, let's take you to therapy, let's get you some help. It could just be something else that they're enduring just for that day, just in that moment. They'll be able to process it quickly, but our job is to really keep an eye on that. Next slide. So what are students saying? What are young people saying about their experiences, right? They're worried about their safety. They're anxious about returning to their social spheres more than their academics, although there are some concerns about falling behind. There are also some students who have really thrived with this distance learning, and they're nervous about going back to schools, how that's going to affect them academically. They feel that their lives are chaotic right now because of everything that is going on, not only with the pandemic, but socially, politically, environmentally, and everything else. Some people are, falling behind in school, and then others are feeling, like I said earlier, that they're going to be falling behind when they're returning, because school actually contributes to their anxiety. So, we really have to focus on their behavior. What's it telling you? As a parent, you really have to keep an eye on those changes to determine if your child needs to get some more assistance, if there's something that you can have some check-ins, regular check-ins with them to see how things are going. What kind of skills are they using to get through these difficult times? They need safe spaces to process things and to be kids and enjoy life without all that pressure and responsibility. So making sure that you're not comparing them to others, because this puts an extreme pressure on them, reminding them of their wonderful uniqueness, and that that they are no better or no worse than others, right? Because they feel so much pressure when they're just by society, by parents, by families. And so we have to make sure that we are letting them relax and letting them be themselves and appreciate their uniqueness. Okay, next slide. So this is just a depiction of the feelings that our children and our youth are experiencing. And the mere fact that I'm looking at this, I don't know how it makes you feel, but it's pretty unsettling to me. So imagine all of that occurring in one's mind, and it's our responsibility to have to help them navigate through all of these thoughts. And I just want to remind everybody that you don't have to be a mental health professional. You don't have to have a degree in psychology or social work or counseling to do this. We just have to be caring adults that are going to be available and willing to listen and support without judgment. I know that's easier said than done because we've been taught to be judgmental, but we have to practice that. And as we're practicing that, we too are going to make mistakes, and that's okay, because we're learning. Our children are not expecting us to be perfect, and we shouldn't expect for them to be perfect either. I was talking to a couple of young people, just trying to, before this presentation, just trying to get a feeling of what is it that they really needed. And some of the things that they said is, we need a space for ourselves. We need to be able to have some downtime. We need genuine support. So when teachers tell you that they want you to prioritize your mental health, and that we realize that you have lives outside of school, and so we'll be flexible. If you need to miss an assignment, put your mental health first, prioritize it. We'll be flexible with timelines. And what I'm hearing is that a lot of times that's just talk, because then at a later date they'll say, well, your assignment was late, so you missed 10 points off of it, or we're not going to accept it because it's late. Again, we are not honoring our young people's experiences. We are continuing to go, as if life were just normal, if there's no pandemic. We're continuing to have the 6 periods and the inordinate amount of homework, all while living through a pandemic. And I feel like we haven't really learned anything from this experience. Just yesterday, as I'm dropping off my child for school, she reminds me I'm going to be in, 6 classes, and we're going to all be in the hallways. And I'm just wondering, why didn't we had all this time? Why didn't we refigure and reinvent? Why is it that we have to have the 6 periods? They were on a quarter system last year where they had 3 classes, and mind you, they had plenty of homework, but it wasn't 6 classes. It was a little bit more palpable for them. And then all of a sudden, here we go, back to normal, 6 classes, same amount of homework. We are not being, careful with our students as they are changing from class to class. It's just business as usual. And so we didn't take this opportunity to really reimagine and reinvent education. So I feel horrible about that. I mean, it's not my responsibility, but I feel that we just missed this beautiful opportunity to be able to make things better for students. So that's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. It's a lot to envision. And all the while, trying to figure out what is it that, how am I going to be able to keep my students safe? How am I going to be able to support their mental health while they're still navigating life as usual? Okay, next slide. Sorry, I can go off on a tangent and I have no air, so I am dying. So I appreciate your grace. All right, so let's move on to, really the meat of this. So what does my child need, right? When trying to look at the needs of our children, and I keep using the term children loosely, right? Because adolescents and young adults don't want to be called children, but the fact of the matter is that they're always going to be our children. So just bear with me. And so as we examine these needs, we shouldn't assume that we know what they need, right? We should pause for a second and think of a time when we were emotional distress, when we were anxious, when we were overwhelmed or sad, or you name it, and think of how somebody else approached us, right? Some people may have used terms like, well, like take a deep breath, or, drink some tea, or it's really not that bad, or it's all going to be fine. And, all sorts of those suggestions and terms, right? And we rarely were asked, like, what do you need? What could help you? So when we're looking at our children and their emotional health and their mental health and their needs, we shouldn't assume, right? So we should start asking them specifically, what do you need? What will help you now? How can I help you? And sort of think of have you ever felt this way before? And if you have, what has brought you through it? Communicating to them that there are going to be more times when they're going to feel like this. So making sure that they're exploring different options is helpful so that they can learn what works for them. Not works for you or for their sibling or the neighbor or the kid down the street, but really what works for them, right? I will completely disclose, and I'll be vulnerable with all of you, because I feel like if I'm not vulnerable and not honest about my own situation, that I'm working against my own work. And so I live with anxiety. My youngest daughter has a lot of anxiety, and she has told me many times, Mom, when you tell me to breathe, or when I'm sitting in these workshops and they just tell you to take a deep breath and breathe, it doesn't help me. That doesn't take away the anxiety. So we have, really been trying to figure out what will help her with that. And it's a work in progress. We trial and error. So all this just to say that, remember to keep your support simple. That a lot of times we're looking at these innovative, elevated, and all the leaning in and all those buzzwords that are being used. But let's go back to the basics. That's what we really need to do. There's no magic wand. There's no, magic program. It's just the mere fact that we have to process and unpack feelings, and that it's going to be messy, and that it's going to be, uncomfortable and painful, and there may be tears and there may be snot that's flying around, but it's going to get, people are going to learn, and your children are going to learn what's going to work best for them, right? The other important thing is what I said earlier. You reassure them that they're not alone. You can share some of this data that I shared earlier, so that they know that they're not the only ones that are experiencing these thoughts or these feelings. All right, next slide. Let's get into some strategies. So here are some tips that can be helpful. And when I said helpful, just know that it's, it's just that. They might be helpful because there's no guarantee. So the first thing is you want to always be available, right? You should have an open door policy and invite conversation about what's worrying them, and letting them know that it's natural and okay to feel anxious. Don't overwhelm them with questions. One of the things that's really hard to do is being able to be comfortable with that awkward silence, right? Because sometimes we want like a response now, but what we're avoiding is we're avoiding them the opportunity to process that information that they're receiving, and then how they're thinking about it. And if we push them too much, we might just get a negative reaction, right? Remember to listen without immediately offering your opinions or your advice. They don't want to hear that. And also don't be dismissive, because using phrases like, well, you should be grateful, or why are you sad? You have nothing to be sad about. You have everything that you need. You have it better than others. Comments like that, even though our intentions might be to help them to put their thoughts and feelings into perspective, these comments actually make them feel more alienated, more alone, and more misunderstood. Again, creating safe spaces. If you haven't been able to create a safe space, don't worry. There's still time. Taking baby steps, making sure that you're not expecting change overnight, just maintaining that open door policy, right? And then again, what do you need from me? What can I do to help you process right now? Also being attentive, watching for signs of anxiety, watching for signs of depression or stress. The stress of returning to school, it can impact their mental health. And so it's important for them to know that it's normal and it's okay to feel overwhelmed. And vulnerability, right? Share your own feelings, but don't share too much. Don't overshare. Know and share that, you too are concerned, but that you have faith that things are going to be okay. Be collaborative when you are working with your school. Let them know, and don't be of your child's concerns, and don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're worried about anything in particular, it is beneficial if you tell the school so that they can help in making that a smoother transition, and check in with your child. Be positive, focus on the good things at school, and remind them that there's a lot of good things that await them, right? That they can see their friends and their teachers. There's going to be new things. And what can you anticipate that's going to come out of those new things? What are the good things that come out? And also, one thing to remember is learning to shift our thoughts and our language, right? We always thrived back in my day, I know, and I've been guilty of using this, but it's when you know better, you do better. And so I've shifted my language. So I used to use things like, oh, I'm so proud of you, right? We shouldn't focus on our children pleasing us. We should really focus on teaching children to be proud of themselves and not to seek approval and satisfaction of others, because that creates a lot of pressure on them, right? Because then they start living to please others instead of themselves. Fostering creativity. So soliciting ideas from them for self-care, exploring ways to have downtime and foster creativity and rest. A lot of times we focus too much on the accomplishments and on what children are going to be or youth are going to be when they grow up. we focus on that so much that we lose sight of what and who they are now. So they get pressure from society, from parents, from school. Like, what are you going to do? You know, you got to take all these AP classes so that you can get into a good college, without really thinking about how is that affecting their mental health. I also would encourage keeping a gratitude journal, something simple, right? There's a lot of research that demonstrates that starting your day with a gratitude journal or just appreciation significantly improves your day. You don't have to use anything fancy, a journal from Dollar Tree, a piece of paper, just do it on the computer, whatever you have available. Okay, next slide. These are all just additional strategies. I know my time is limited, but I just want to make sure that, you know, you're validating and relating, you're setting limits and reasoning. There's the support and praise. This is all kind of what I said earlier. Coping, learning healthy coping skills, exercising, rest, and limiting exposure to the news, because there's so much out there that is bombarding our students. We don't have to jump quickly, like I said, to counseling or to medication, just exploring other options with them, and letting them know, you know, that you're next to them. So for example, if you say, well, why don't you exercise? Well, instead of saying that, why don't you invite them to go for a walk or other activity that they enjoy? And sometimes you may even have to flip it around and just say, hey, can you go for a walk for me? Walk with me, because I really need it, right? So you're kind of like wink, wink. It's really for them, but you'll be also helping yourself. Next slide. Okay, so these are some just things to watch out for if your child is exhibiting any of this stuff. These are reasons for you to be more concerned. This comes from the California Association of School Psychologists. And if you are seeing all of these, again, I'm not going to read any of this, but, you know, or all of this. But if they're worrying excessively, if their self-esteem is diminishing, if they have a lot of despair or grief or anger, if their habits are changing, like their eating patterns, or they're crying easily or having tantrums, if they have a decreased appetite or fatigue or any of this, if it's going on for too long, for like 2 weeks or more, it's a reason for you to be concerned and get some help, reach out to get some help. All right, next slide. I just want to mention that if there is ever any mention of suicide or feeling, you know, like a burden or not wanting to be here anymore, or just, you know, I can't take this anymore, those are phrases that we need to watch out for and take it very seriously. Sometimes people err by saying, oh, they're just so dramatic, they want attention. It could be that they want attention, but they want attention because they're in pain. So any of that should really be taken seriously, and you should ask for professional help. You can also call any of the hotlines. And I want to remind people that you don't have to be in crisis in order to call a hotline. And we'll go over those a little bit into the other part of the presentation. But definitely, you know, any language or any kind of disruptive behavior, either at school or in the community or at home, from a typically, you know, pretty even keeled student or child, then make sure that you are paying attention to this and reaching out for help. Okay, next slide. So anxiety is really huge. It's one of the most common mental health disorders in among children. And I borrowed this from NAMI Glendale. So NAMI Glendale, if you're out there listening, thank you. Big shout out to you. If your child is anxious, you may want to review some of the things with them, right? What can you do right now to help you feel better? Is your anxiety making this a bigger deal than what it actually is? So what you want to do is you take this and apply it to your child, and this will really help them process. And so the next time that they could be feeling anxious, they might be going towards this. Like I just shared with you, I have a lot of anxiety. Doing presentations is one of my biggest anxiety provoking things that I have to do. And so I often have to, talk my way through it and say, okay, I've done this before. It's come out okay. It's not perfect. I'm not expected to be perfect, but I'm going to give people the information that will hopefully help them. And so these are like self-talk, right? And so we have to teach our children and teach each other about self-talk, because it's very beneficial as you're going through difficult times, because most of the time you get through things. It's not always the best experience. It's not a painless experience, but you do get through it. All right, next slide. Let's talk a little bit about resources. These are different resources in which the CDE is involved in supporting. And so the very first resource I want to mention is a trusted space. So if we can go to the next slide. One of the very first things, and a simple thing, I know we're all sick of videos and Zooms, but this is a very well done documentary, and it is entitled A Trusted Space, and it is a 43-minute film that features teachers and parents and students and some experts like Linda Darlingham and Pedro Noguera, who you talk about what it is to be living in the pandemic, and how as adults we can create trusted and safe spaces for our children to learn social emotional skills and language, and how they, we can foster these nurturing spaces so that we can help children unpack their experiences and their feelings, and really redirect the grief. And when I talk about grief, it's very broad. It's not about, grieving a particular loss, like a loss of a loved one. It could be just grieving the loss of social interaction, grieving the loss of a routine. So redirecting that grief into growth and helping children really learn strategies and skills to be resilient and in the face of adversity, because that is really the key to all of this, right? Again, I remind you, we go through trials and tribulations throughout our lifetime, and it's the way that we look at things. If we can look at things as an opportunity rather than something that's detrimental to us, it is going to really shift our thinking and keep us moving forward. Right, next slide. This is a no-cost training for parents and school staff. It's the Youth Mental Health First Aid training, which can be offered virtually or in person. Right now, we'd rather offer it virtually. I'm hoping that Yasmin Irfani, I know that she works for NAMI San Fernando, and she's one of our YMHFA instructors. But this is a great, great training for anybody to really learn about the basics of mental health and wellness, and how to approach a child or a teen from age 6 to 18. I have actually used it from children as young as 3 to my 87-year-old mom. It teaches you an action plan to determine if the student or the child is at risk for suicide or self-harm. It teaches you strategies how to listen non-judgmentally, giving them information and not advice or opinions, and encouraging professional help as well as self-help and other strategies that are going to help them through. Next slide. One of our biggest programs is our Living Work Start online suicide prevention training. This training is about 90 minutes, and it's for middle and high school staff and students. It is free to all California middle and high school staff and students, and it really builds skills for learning and increasing your mental health literacy and your awareness. And also, again, if you run into somebody, or maybe it's yourself, maybe you recognize some signs within yourself going, okay, I don't think my thought process is okay. I'm feeling a little bit different. I need to reach out for help. Or my friend, they've been talking about not wanting to be here. They're planning on taking their dog to the pound. And so all of these things are making me think that my friend is depressed and they're thinking about suicide. This is how I can help. This wonderful training teaches them those skills through videos and experiential learning. Again, it is free. And I think there's popping in or they've already popped in the link. Please access that, get it to as many young people and as many educators as possible. All right, next slide. The CDE has a Students in Crisis webpage that has a lot of resources. All of these resources that I'm going to mention are on this webpage. And the very first thing that you notice on there is that Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You click on there, or you can call 911, but we encourage you to call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Next slide. We also recommend, and I have it on my phone, I can't use my phone because I'm using it for this Zoom call, but the My3 app is a really great app. Right now the website is down, but it should be coming up shortly. This identifies 3 of your contacts, 3 people that you can access in case of emotional distress or suicide thoughts. And you obviously let them know you're in my top 3. And so that they pick 3, because if one isn't available, the second one may be available. If they're not available, you jump to the 3rd person. But out of those 3, one of them will be available. It goes through this really great development of your own safety plan. And it's a very great tool. So I will let NAMI California know when this is back up, and hopefully you can download it on your phone and share it with young people. All right, next slide. There's also a virtual hope box, which really helps put things into perspective for students. There's all kinds of like games and things that are activities that are relaxing. There's a section for young people to learn about coping skills, and there's like guided meditation and just things that distract them and could help them just create this hope box, right? Because we know that if a student or anybody is in so much pain that it overrides the hope that they have in their life, that's when they become suicidal. So this virtual hope box really helps them put together a list of things that they can look forward to. You can also do one like a physical hope box. It's one that I used to do with my students when I worked at an elementary school, but I would actually keep, like letters and cards and things that really made me feel good. And I would keep that in there, and I would encourage them to do it. You can decorate the box. So you can do virtual, or you can do something in that's physically there, so that you can go through pictures and things that remind you of all the wonderful moments that you have lived. All right, next slide. Gridex is an online platform. It was developed by the University of San Francisco, and it really is a great platform of self-discovery and exploration. There are self-care toolkits. There's a skill studio to tap into your creativity. And there's a self-interview that helps you reflect on your experiences and your coping skills and how you deal with adversity. And then next slide. And then there's all of these different hotlines. And I just want to remind you that hotlines are not only for crises. If you ever want to talk, call any of these hotlines to talk a problem through or a concern through, you can call not only for yourself, but for any loved one or friend or anybody that you care about, to just kind of process it. If you yourself feel like, I'm going through a hard time, I'm not in a crisis, so I don't think anybody will listen to me. No, there are these hotlines that have fully trained people who can listen to you and help you process whatever your concerns are. And I would highly encourage teens to use this next one. If we can go to the next slide, which is the Teen Line. And the Teen Line is actually staffed by teens for teens. The teens are fully trained, and they are being supervised by a mental health professional. And they are available by text from 6 to 9 p.m. or by phone from 6 to 10 p.m. And if you, like this says, if you have a problem or just want to talk with another teen who understands, then give them a call. Next slide. The San Diego County Office of Education has come out with this wonderful teen guide to mental health and wellness. On one side, it has all kinds of resources, which include some of the hotlines that I mentioned and the My3 app and some other resources. And then on the flip side, it lists 10 self-care strategies for teens. So this is really good to kind of have handy, excuse me, for those teens that may be experiencing a difficult time. I would think that it's not only for teens, but adults can use it as well. Next slide. There's also opportunities for youth development and advocacy. I know that Sophia Amespa is going to be talking about the NCHS clubs. So I look forward to hearing all about that. I am also a collaborator with her on that. But there's also Mind Out Loud, which started as a virtual student event last year. It was the very first year that we launched it. We're going to continue to hold these virtual events. From that, there are opportunities to become Mind Out Loud or Molster student ambassadors that are involved in advocacy, that are involved in lots of mental health and suicide prevention activities. And then, of course, there's the California Youth Empowerment Network, or also known as CAYEN. They have youth development opportunities around mental health as well. Next slide. I just wanted to highlight the Mind Out Loud event that we had in May, because we had some pretty spectacular speakers. We had Angie Thomas, who you may know is the author of The Hate You Give and Concrete Rose, or Rose and Concrete, sorry. There we had Propaganda. We even had Big Sean, the rapper, Nahoa Life. If you haven't seen him, I encourage you to Google him or YouTube, and he's a spectacular 12 or 13-year-old. And then we had Max Stossel from The Social Dilemma, and Shane Harper, who's an actor, and then a really energetic DJ. So we are going to be having another event in the spring, and we hope that you can join us or have your students join us as well. Next slide. Then there's the Directing Change program and student contest that is held every year. They encourage students to submit 60-second PSAs on mental health, suicide prevention, and from cultural lens. And my electricity is back. Next slide. Another great resource is Know the Signs. This is a great place to just learn about the different signs of suicide ideation. Next slide. I just wanted to mention Senate Bill 972, which requires all schools that issue student identification cards to list the name and number of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and other local hotlines in case a student needs to access them. And there's also AB 2246, which I feel that parents really need to know about. And I apologize, I didn't make a slide for this, but this bill actually requires schools to create a suicide prevention policy. So every district should have a suicide prevention policy and protocols. And I encourage you to research them, to ask your school principals or your counselors about it. They should be listed somewhere on the website. I mean, it's not a requirement, but it is one of the best practices. If you're not aware of them, I would encourage you to ask about it and what the protocols are, and also to become familiar with the resources on your school site. And with that, I probably went way over my time. Just want to thank you all. We can go to the last slide. And if you have any questions, there is my email, and I encourage you to reach out. Thank you so much for having me. I don't know if there's any questions.
Excuse me. we'll go ahead and transition over to Sophia. She's going to share some information on NAMI on campus, but I just wanted to say while you were going through this, like just so much like thank yous and acknowledgements, like just the information that you're sharing. I have a 17-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I was messaging with one of our staff on the side about like, oh my gosh, like all the different things like I should do when I talk to my kids that I don't do. So it's really wonderful and helpful information, even for those of us that are just in this space, like the reminders, for how we work with young people. Such amazing information. Like my head is spinning with everything that you shared. So thank you so much. There is one question in here. And I'll go back through when we get to the end. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A, but there is one here that about AB 4246, if that's in private schools as well.
2246 is for public schools, but we do, if you look on the CDE's website, we have a model suicide prevention policy that schools can access, as a guide. And in there, we acknowledge that private schools are not required to have that, but we do encourage them. And because it is our ethical and legal responsibility to help those students who could be thinking of suicide. So they're not required, but yes, they should.
Okay. Thank you. And then I know that, a huge thank you to Carolina. She's been putting a lot of this information into the chat box as you've been presenting it. I just want to let everyone know we will make sure all of this information is in our follow-up email for you as well. So if there is anything that you missed, we'll have that in that email to you all. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sophia Amezcua. She's going to share with everyone information on our NAMI on campus high school clubs.
Angela. And thank you, Monica. Always a pleasure to hear all of the wonderful resources that you always provide, especially at our NCHS trainings. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So my name is Sophia, and I'm the NCHS coordinator here at NAMI, California. I know that there is at least one advisor that I saw in the beginning that's here, so thank you so much for coming. I'm the person behind all the emails, scheduling the trainings, and all that fun stuff. So what is the purpose of NAMI on campus high school? These are student-led clubs where students are empowered to become advocates, provide resources, and create a safe space where people can talk about mental health, learn about mental wellness practices. This is a place where they are supportive with students who have mental health conditions, those who have family members with a mental health condition. As I mentioned, they provide resources. They encourage the recognition of the early warning signs of mental health conditions and seeking help. They work on reducing stigma, which can be either in their activities or bringing in guest speakers. They create an inclusive environment and make sure that students feel that they're not alone. So in an NCHS club, as I mentioned, they do activities. This could be bringing and ending the silence presentation to their club. And an ending the silence presentation is a NAMI signature program, which has 3 tracks for families, teachers, and students. Each of them talk about the warning signs of mental health. What is mental health? What is stigma? How does it affect people? They also combat stigma. And stigma can really impact students in seeking the help that they need. Getting comments from peers or even like remarks from teachers can really prevent them from getting that help. Getting comments like many comments that Monica had mentioned earlier, like, oh, it's not that bad, or people have it worse, or what do you have to be worried about? These clubs help recognize those stigmatizing behaviors so that students feel encouraged to get support and learn how to help themselves and others. I'm sorry if I'm rushing a little bit. So in these clubs, we empower leaders, we help students seek support, and we make mental health an acceptable topic on school. Sorry, I made little cards today. So the students can become leaders or work on their leadership skills by planning events on campus, learning how to coordinate with the school, with their advisors, teachers. If they have a person coming in, they learn how to coordinate with them. They learn how to take initiative in their communities, being that discussing with their school, like trying to talk with their school board about having more resources available on campus in their counselor's office, or talking to teachers about practices that they can use to help students feel less anxiety and stress around, especially like testing times. They also learn how to advocate for themselves and or others about mental health. Empowering the students, as I mentioned before, just making it an acceptable topic makes those students feel more empowered to seek that help that they need. They can identify who the person is they can go to on campus to talk about mental health or just to get the resources that they need. One thing that I do like to mention, that this club isn't a support group, it's a place for learning and advocacy. However, this doesn't mean that the students can't create their own program off on the side of this, where students can do support. I know of at least one school that did their own program called Teen Talk, or Talk to a Teen, where they trained their high school students to help other high school students deal with anxiety and stress of school. Okay, so if you are interested in creating a club, you just need to fill out an interest form, and this can all be found on our website. You would meet with me for an orientation webinar. We'll discuss just basic mental health information, as well as some stigma information, and then go over the next steps and how to get your club started and make it as sustainable as possible. We also make sure that we partner with our local affiliates, because they'll be your main partner in providing resources or even collaborating on events. Some popular collaborations are like the NAMI walks, where students can volunteer, engage with their community, and bring more youth to our regular NAMI events. After that is completed, you meet with your local affiliate, get papers signed, fill out your application. You just have to attend one of our NCHS trainings, which are super fun. Monica is my partner in doing all that. And then we wrap it up and we'll send you a certificate, and you and your club will be official. We do ask that you have at least 4 students. They don't have to be, but we do recommend that 50% of the students are below senior, just so we have that sustainability so it doesn't die off right after our seniors graduate. We also advise that the advisor is somebody who's on campus and helps lead their club, is comfortable talking about mental health, and is also available to be at all the meetings and all the events and encourage your students. You need to get the approval from your principal and then local NAMI affiliate, but the local NAMI affiliate will probably be an easy sell. And if you do want to get in touch with me and hear more information, my email is here, nchs@namic.org, or you can get me at my, not personal, but my individual email for NAMI, which is my first name, Sophia with an F, @namic.org, and then you can also visit the website. But if you would like to know even more in-depth information, you can attend our info session on the 24th at 1 p.m. I believe Angela will be sending y'all a flyer and the link to register. And that's all for me.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And again, thank you to Monica for all of the wonderful information. I know we talked a little bit about everything at the beginning and how a lot of students are really looking at sort of their third school year with some sort of COVID restriction. And there's so many things that you've been able to share that I think will help us as parents, those who are supporting young people, any of the young folks that have joined us today. I know we have a lot of our affiliate representatives. We've got our CCP counselors working on the Cal Hope project that have joined us today. And I know that a lot of what you have shared will be really helpful in the work that we do day to day. And so thank you for that. And then we did put the link if anybody would like to register for the NCHS Info Night coming up in a couple of weeks. That registration link is in the chat box. Again, we'll share that in the follow-up for today's event. But we really encourage you to share that with your networks. Anyone who's looking to, form a club, to please reach out to us. Sophia has done a lot of great work with our clubs, and we're really excited for the upcoming school year to get the clubs that we have more resources and support, and to add to our club roster. So I'm gonna check to see if we have any questions here. Let's see. Don't see anything here. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, anything that our presenters can share, you can go ahead and use the chat box. Let's see. I will say in the meantime, we do invite you to check our website for our upcoming town hall events. You can register straight away on our website. We also have our event evaluation. We ask if you could just take a couple of minutes to let us know how we did today with this event. And if there's any topics or presentations that you'd like to see us bring to you, please let us know. We'd love to make sure that the events that we host are those that you find valuable. And so if there's anything that we can, bring to you, please let us know. And the links are there in the chat box. So our evaluation form on SurveyMonkey, the link to our town hall page on our website. And again, if you think of any questions that you have or any information that we can provide to you as a result of the conversation today, you're always free to reach out to us. I know that Monica shared her contact information. Sophia shared hers for NCHS. And then you can always reach out to me, Angela Brand at NAMI California. It's angela@namica.org. We're all available to answer any questions or help connect you to the resources that we shared today, or further resources through your local affiliate in the community. Let's see. I don't see any other questions popping up here, so we can go ahead and give everybody back a little bit more of their Friday. Before we go, I just want to say thank you so much to our team at NAMI California. We've got folks that work behind the scenes to make these events possible. A big thank you to Ragini Lal and to Carolina Nazario. They were helping with today's event. And so thank you for all the work that they did to host the technical aspects, all the stuff that was shared in the chat box. Thank you to Sophia for all the work that you do for NCHS, and a huge thank you to Monica for the information you shared today, but just really your ongoing partnership with NAMI California. We are so grateful for the work that you do and the support that you bring to our programs. So with that, I'll say to everyone, have a wonderful weekend, stay well, stay safe, and thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you at our next event. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.